Next up, podcast listeners, we have the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Producer? Here it is.
Dum 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 dum.
And it's the dumbest bill in America, and it is banning the word war. Banning the word war? You got it correctly. So get this, podcast listeners. In the United Nations, which is based in Manhattan, by the way, in New York City, the UN faces allegations that staff was banned from saying the word war and invasion. So they couldn't say war and they couldn't say invasion. So in the Euro News, the United Nations has denied claims that it has banned staff from using the words war or invasion to describe the conflict in Ukraine. According to a leaked email, UN employees were instead reportedly told to use the word conflict, and military offensive. New documents unveiled by the Irish Times on Wednesday claim that instructions were passed down from top-level officials within the UN soon after Russia invaded Ukraine. Well, we have a European report on this, and we have a clip. Here it is.
This story first appeared from Naomi O'Leary in the Irish Times. She wrote that UN staff had been instructed not to refer to the war in Ukraine as either a war or an invasion. According to a reportedly leaked email, they were instead told to refer to it as a conflict or a military offensive. And the Irish Times has since reported that this order came from the very top, from the Office of the United Nations Secretary General. Now, Russia has always referred to the war in Ukraine as a military operation, and they have since cracked down further on what both media outlets and citizens can say. Russia holds one of the 5 permanent seats on the UN Security Council, and this report raises questions about the UN's sensitivity and whether it avoids using certain words so it doesn't upset powerful member states. The Ukrainian foreign minister himself said that this report meant that the UN's reputation was at stake. Well, here in the Cube, we spoke to Naomi O'Leary, and she told us that she had heard from very shocked and appalled staff at the UN about these reports.
The reaction to that was absolute shock. People were appalled at that. I mean, if we can't call things clearly by their names, who is it advantaging? It gives an advantage to the invader, clearly, if you can't use the word invasion.
So if you can't use the word invasion, it gives an advantage to the person who's invading. If you can't use the word war, then it gives an advantage to the person who's decided to start the war, right? What else would you call it? And so what ended up happening here is the UN decided that they were going to circle the wagons because this, of course, hit the press, primarily in Europe, by the way, because the American press naturally wouldn't cover it. And Snopes came out. I had to pull it up. And Snopes goes, did the UN ban the word war regarding Russia's invasion of Ukraine? And then they go on to say, well, no, they didn't ban it. There may have been like a policy, but there was no ban to do that. And so, folks, look, we do this dumbest bill in America for a reason, right? The UN, when they so-called make policy, it's not law. It's not binding to any of us. And anyway, this was a policy. It's not a law, but we still have this in the dumbest bill in America anyway, because it demonstrates to you how language from the UN can creep into the media and can creep into the United States so that before you know it, you really can't even use the appropriate English words to describe what is happening. Like you need a pronoun. Really? Why do I need a pronoun if my name is Mark? Why would you just call me Mark? Why does a pronoun? Why is that required? Well, because they're trying to mess with the English language. Same thing here. You can't say it's a war. No, it's some sort of skirmish between Russia. It's a disagreement. Meanwhile, you look at the images on TV. What do you see? You see Ukraine literally it's leveled. It's like one city after another, one village after another is systematically being leveled. And yet these idiots in the media and the idiots at the UN are like, well, since Russia is part of the UN Security Council, where you have, 5 powerful countries on the Security Council, Russia being one of them, Russia wants to make sure that you really don't call it anything other than, a conflict or a military offensive, but really a conflict, because it's just a disagreement. right? It's just a disagreement. And connected to this, podcast listeners, just to make you even laugh harder, in Fox News, more Republicans than Democrats would stay and fight if what happened in Ukraine occurred in the United States. Does this come as a surprise? More Republicans than Democrats would stay and fight if what happened in the Ukraine occurred in the U.S. So if Americans were in the same position as Ukrainians right now, more Republicans than Democrats would stay and fight, according to a poll released Monday. Of the Republicans surveyed in Quinnipiac University poll, 68% said they would stay and fight, compared to 40% of Democrats who would cut and run. Of course they would cut and run. I mean, it's obvious that that's exactly what they do, because you want to know why? They wouldn't call it a war. They couldn't call it an invasion. It would be a conflict. But once they use the word conflict, what do you think would happen? They would just, run and flee. But I guess you wouldn't have to call it that. We'd have to use a different word. What could we use for that? Escape. Go on vacation. Maybe that's what they would do, right, Chris? And that's the dumbest bill in America, banning the use of the word war at the United Nations. And that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Getter, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.